Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something pretty unusual.
Hmm.
Some of the biggest policy blueprints for the next administration didn't come from a formal briefing or some big speech.
No, not at all.
They came out in this rapid-fire series of statements over the Thanksgiving holiday. We're talking remarks on Air Force One, calls to the military, even long rants on Truth Social.
It was almost like watching policy get drafted in real time, right out in the open, and under, intense political pressure.
And all of it culminated in this one major vow, a permanent pause on migration.
And a huge immediate security overhaul to go with it.
The timing here is it's so critical to understand. The sources we're looking at link this entire policy push directly to the tragic death of a National Guard hero in D.C.
Yes, and that's the key. The allegation is that the individual responsible was connected to an Afghan migrant community.
So the connection was made instantly.
Instantly. What's fascinating is how quickly this policy, this huge migration freeze, was tethered to that security incident. The administration's messaging, according to the sources, drew a straight line from the death to what they called Biden failures on the border.
So it immediately transforms the whole debate.
Completely. It stops being a complex logistical issue about immigration and becomes this urgent, direct response to a national security breach.
And that sets some extremely high emotional and political stakes. It's a way to use a specific, really painful event to reboot that whole America First agenda.
Right. So any move they make on a policy freeze is seen not just as an immigration stance, but as a necessary action for public safety.
And that sense of urgency dictates the speed and the sheer breadth of the changes they're proposing.
Precisely. It signals an immediate intent to act, leveraging that political moment for, maximum momentum.
Okay, so let's unpack the specifics of this permanent pause. I mean, that phrasing alone, it sounds incredibly comprehensive. What exactly is being targeted here?
It is comprehensive and a global.
Hmm.
The vow details a full migration freeze, and it specifically targets migration from what the sources term third world countries.
Okay.
And they explicitly name failed states, citing Somalia as a prime example. So this makes it clear we're not just talking about southern border enforcement.
No, this is a global filtering mechanism.
Exactly, based on national origin and state stability.
So if you're turning off the migration tap from those regions, what tools are being proposed to deal with people who are already here?
Well, the focus then shifts heavily to enforcement and status review. The policy outlines two major components beyond the freeze itself.
Which are?
A huge acceleration of mass deportations, and critically, the implementation of denaturalization reviews.
Okay, let's stop there for a second. Denaturalization reviews. That is a complex and I'd say a potentially explosive term. For you listening, what does that actually mean in practice?
It means stripping citizenship from individuals who got it through naturalization.
On what grounds?
Often on claims that there was fraud or some kind of concealment during their application process. And historically, it's been used very, very rarely.
So including it in the policy is a major signal.
It's a huge signal. It shows an intent to review and maybe even revoke the citizenship of specific naturalized groups, which is legally intricate, incredibly resource intensive, and it just generates massive constitutional debate.
That really raises the temperature of this whole discussion. So what about people with existing temporary statuses?
That's another specific target. The plan explicitly focuses on ending what they call temporary protected status loopholes, or TPS.
The TPS is for people who can't safely return home because of, say, a war or a natural disaster.
Exactly. And by aiming to end these so-called loopholes, the administration is signaling they intend to force the return of hundreds of thousands of people whose protected status has been extended for years, sometimes decades.
Wow.
And on top of that, they plan to significantly increase green card scrutiny for anyone applying from nations that they identify as terror-prone spots.
That is a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Clearly designed to appeal to hardline border hawks. The sources suggest this whole package is being framed as a morale boost for enforcement and military personnel.
Yes, by contrasting it with what they call perceived democratic weakness.
How is that presented as a positive for those who want stricter enforcement?
It's really just about signaling a clear mission and unwavering support.
Okay.
When agents or troops feel like they're operating in a restrictive environment or that their enforcement actions just get overturned, morale plummets.
So this is a counter move.
It is. This policy trying to create a binary choice.
Yeah.
The old environment allowed security failures,
Right.
but the new one provides total executive backing for aggressive, immediate enforcement. The whole message is meant to restore confidence and provide a concrete mandate that the era of open doors is over.
Let's shift gears now to the claimed domestic consequences. Because this policy is being sold to the public not just as a security measure, but as a major economic benefit.
That's right.
What are the specific upsides they're proposing for everyday Americans?
The claimed benefits really center on two core areas: public safety and labor market protection. On safety, the argument is that crackdown will lead to specific cuts in crime spikes.
And on the economy.
Economically, the key promise is protecting domestic jobs.
Protecting domestic jobs is a classic talking point in these debates. But the source material gets very specific here.
It does.
It mentions the tech industry and restricting what it calls H-1B floods. We should probably clarify that. What is the H-1B visa, and why is restricting it so central to this argument?
So the H-1B is the main work visa for highly skilled foreign workers in specialized fields. Think engineers, software developers, researchers.
The people Silicon Valley relies on.
Heavily. The administration's argument is that the current system allows a flood of these workers, which they claim depresses wages and takes high-value jobs from qualified American graduates.
So restricting those visas is presented as a direct protection for the domestic, highly educated workforce. In theory, that sounds effective for those job seekers. But here's the critical point. A sudden, broad policy like this carries immense risk. If the goal is economic strength, why do the sources suggest this could actually lead to a significant economic drag?
Because the economy is just so complex.
Yeah.
And the reliance on foreign labor is pervasive. It touches every single sector, from high-tech to agriculture. The sources estimate a potential 2 to 3% GDP reduction under a freeze like this.
A 2 to 3% GDP reduction?
Yes, and that's not just a theory. That's the projected cost of an immediate unexpected labor shortage across the entire economy.
But wait a minute. If the policy aims to protect American jobs,
Right.
why would removing workers lead to a GDP hit that big? That seems completely counterproductive.
It is, and that tension is really the core analytical challenge here. The GDP hit comes because these foreign workers are often filling jobs Americans either can't or won't fill, or they have these extremely niche, high-demand skills that are critical for innovation.
So the tech industry again.
Take the tech industry. They might complain about H-1B wages, but tech giants will, as the sources predict, scream labor shortages, because stopping the flow of specialized engineering talent immediately stifles innovation. It forces projects to halt or even move overseas.
So the economic fallout is immediate and it's broad.
It's measurable across many industries, not just where the jobs are allegedly being taken.
Okay, so a major hurdle is the economic consequence of labor shortages. But arguably, the biggest obstacle for any policy aiming for a permanent pause has to be the legal system.
Without a doubt.
What are the legal walls that this administration faces if they try to fast-track this with an executive order?
The legal vulnerability is massive, especially because they are signaling they want to use an EO rather than go through Congress. For a policy of this scale, you'd face immediate court challenges on multiple fronts.
Let's talk about the comparison the sources make to the initial travel ban 1.0. Why is that comparison so important for you to understand?
It's a vital comparison. The original travel ban, enacted early in the last administration, was struck down by the courts almost immediately.
Before it could even be refined.
Exactly. The courts found it likely violated procedure and raised serious constitutional concerns, specifically around religious discrimination and the lack of a clear national security basis for targeting those specific nations.
So this new, even broader permanent pause runs the same risk.
It runs an enormous risk of being seen by the judiciary as arbitrary or as exceeding the authority the executive branch has under current immigration law.
In other words, relying on an EO framework makes the whole policy extremely fragile, no matter how politically popular the announcement is.
That's it, exactly. For something to be truly permanent, it requires an act of Congress to change federal law. An EO is, by its very definition, something that can be challenged in court, or just reversed by the next administration.
Which puts the long-term stability of the whole plan in serious doubt. Let's zoom out now beyond the domestic legal and economic fights. What happens globally if the U.S. actually pulls this off and enacts these policies?
The international implications are severe. They'd ripple through diplomacy, global economics. First off, you'd face significant backlash from traditional allies. They expect a predictable migration policy from Washington.
A unilateral freeze would strain those relationships.
Deeply.
And which countries would feel this most acutely?
The sources point to two in particular, India and Mexico. they'd be placed in the crosshairs.
Why them specifically?
Well, India, because of the severe restrictions on skilled H-1B labor and outsourcing, those are huge parts of their economy.
And Mexico.
Mexico, and many Central American nations, because of the massive reduction in remittances, the money sent home by migrants working in the U.S. For many smaller economies, that money is a vital stabilizer.
And cutting that flow could actually create more instability at the border later on.
It could, yeah. That economic interdependence is massive.
Domestically, if we're cutting off foreign labor, we have a gap to fill. The sources mention the need for reverse migration. That's a term we should probably define carefully.
It is. In this context, reverse migration doesn't mean people leaving the U.S. It refers to the urgent domestic need to get American citizens into the job sectors that will suddenly face massive labor shortages.
Everything from farm work to high-level tech.
Everything. This would mean a huge government investment in domestic skills training, vocational programs, maybe even relocation assistance to fill those labor gaps.
Which ties right back into that GDP risk we discussed. Without that strong domestic training piece, the economic damage is almost guaranteed.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
You can't just stop the labor supply without creating a substitute domestic supply, or the economy stalls.
Yeah.
This makes the domestic reskilling challenge just as critical as the border enforcement itself.
Let's touch on the military angle one last time. The policy might be a morale boost for existing troops. But does it complicate military recruitment?
It creates a real internal contradiction. Historically, the military has used programs to recruit non-citizens with special skills language, medical expertise, often fast-tracking their path to citizenship.
So permanent freeze would cut that off.
It risks cutting off a really valuable stream of highly capable recruits and could make existing recruitment problems even worse, even if the messaging pleases the current force.
So finally, let's look at the purely political stakes. If this policy is fast-tracked via executive order, what does that signal for the administration's agenda going forward?
It signals a seismic political event. An EO fast-track policy would immediately become the defining issue heading into the 2026 midterms. It sets the battle lines very clearly on security and immigration.
It's a foundational piece of their platform.
Foundational to the future peace doctrine they're talking about. The vow of no more open doors, ramping up deportations. It all aims to fundamentally redefine the nation's security posture and the very definition of who belongs here.
So we've covered a huge amount of ground. The political push, the legal fragility, the massive economic risks, and we're left with this core tension.
Yeah.
Is this comprehensive security move a real game changer that makes America safer? Or is it mostly just holiday rhetoric for political momentum that's going to buckle under legal and economic pressure?
I think the analysis suggests its success is entirely conditional. Its ability to balance security with growth really depends on whether the administration can pair the enforcement with that robust, immediate domestic skills training, that reverse migration challenge.
If they only focus on the enforcement side,
Then the economic disruption will undermine the whole promise of protecting American prosperity. The policy has to deliver on both fronts to survive.
that link between national security and domestic education is a powerful final thought. You've given us a really clear picture of the risks and the rewards here.
Well, the conversation is just beginning.
Indeed. And considering the massive legal uncertainty and that comparison the sources make to the failed attempts of Travel Ban 1.0, here's a closing thought for you to explore on your own. What are the long-term strategic benefits, or maybe the deliberate political choice, of relying on a legally vulnerable executive order, knowing that Congress is the only way to make immigration law permanent? What does that fragility signal to adversaries and allies alike?
Something to ponder as these complex debates really heat up this winter.
Thank you for navigating this complex set of announcements with us on the Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.